Motivation in Motion. Own your moment and get better today. Well, all right. Well, let's, Coach, appreciate you just joining us for a conversation on the couch. And I look forward to it. So if you could just tell everybody as we start this conversation who you are and a little bit of your journey of all the years of coaching. Just take us down that tree a little bit.
Chris Thurmond, grew up in Sand Springs. Been coaching a long time. This will be my 48th year.
Yeah, and
coaching next year. Been unbelievably fortunate. Been some of the
48
best
years.
places in football. I mean, I could go through the list, but it'd take a couple of days. But
let's hear a few of the stops. Come on.
I'll just hit them. Okay, coached in high school for 7 years at Sand Springs, Claremore, McAlester. Started coaching in college, University of Tulsa, East Carolina, back to Tulsa, TCU, University of Oklahoma, back to TCU, Alabama, Texas A&M, Houston, Kentucky, Rice, Oklahoma State.
Wow. And you got it right because I studied up, so 100% correct.
Right.
So you drilled it.
Right.
Is there any one of those stops that just kind of stands out to you as you kind of reflect back right now, that just a kind of a fond moment or just a trajectory where your path really kind of took you where you were supposed to go, but you didn't know it?
Well, I mean, is everything about my life and journey and coaching, it's like there's two things. First of all, you made a living off of recess your whole life. And,
Recess, I like that.
And you feel like you won the lottery every day, and every place has its own great feeling about it. But when at Alabama, I used to walk out of the coach's dressing room every day, Todd, and I'd look up at Coach Bryant's tower, and I would go, "You got to be kidding me!" A no talent guy from Sand Springs, Oklahoma, and I'm coaching at Alabama and looking at Coach Bryant's tower, and I would get tears in my eyes.
Wow.
And go, "You're kidding me!" But that's coaching. Coaching for me has never been anything except, like I said, it's just like win the lottery every day.
I've never heard that. You've been getting paid at recess
For my whole life.
That is incredible. I've got to use that one.
You feel
that is fantastic.
Feel
of all
free.
the conversations. Tell me a little bit, and I know that we know each other because one of those stops we were on campus together,
absolutely.
right? But tell me a little bit about your faith and just kind of how it intertwines in this journey for you.
The company that I'm in with you guys. I mean, my faith probably pales in comparison to you guys. But I mean, but my faith is important, and it's always been a big part of my life. I think the biggest thing about faith for me is the ability to be empathetic, and to be able to understand that everybody's not coming from exactly the same place.
Okay.
It's one of the great things in life too. I was in New York City, and there was a group outside the Statue of Liberty doing a performance.
Okay. And
then when they concluded their performance, they said, "We all came here on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now." And I think athletically and coaching wise, and the people you associate with and all that, we all come from different spots, and we're all in different places in our journey. Some of us are further along than others. Some of us just getting started, but there's always that unbelievable feeling, connection, fraternal faith, however you want to put it. That we're all joined together.
Yeah, it's interesting because you showed me empathy, and you didn't even coach my position. You want to share a little bit about that?
Todd, you can fill in the details, but I remember you played wide out, and so coaching the defensive backs. I mean, we were around each other in practice all the time, going against each other. But I remember when you were leaving and looking for another place. Fortunately, I knew someone, and I don't remember how you introduced the conversation, and you said, "Coach, do you know it?" Whatever. I don't remember that.
Oh, I remember.
Okay, well,
so I came up donuts.
Right.
So I figured, as a guy on the 2-deep chart at the University of Oklahoma and earned a scholarship, right? It had taken me only 4.5 years to actually take a college rep, it felt like, at wide receiver. And I just knew I could go to Harding or Abilene Christians were the two schools that I targeted because of my faith.
Right.
I wanted to go finish ball, maybe meet a woman of faith and finish this thing out, not knowing, I knew the horizon was close, right? I think we all have hope that you could keep playing, right? Maybe make a living at recess. But it was like I knew that window. I started to understand that I was maximizing my potential. So I went to Harding. They told me absolutely not. They didn't have any money. I went to Abilene Christian and begged the guy, just begged him. I said, listen, Coach, I've told, my dad said, I cannot come home. I have left a full scholarship as the first Barnes to go to college. Like, I need money. He's like, I don't got a spot for you. So I remembered you passed me a note and you had said, if I come up empty, to find you. And so I called you and you called Chuck Bailey, the University of Central Oklahoma, the other defensive back coach. And I don't know what that conversation was, but when I met Chuck, Chuck said, I was told to find you a little bit of money. So Chuck found me $1,500 and a local scholarship and told me to borrow books from my buddies. And it was the best opportunity of my life. Right. But I always thought it was about football. But now I realize why God shut those doors. My father had lost his way. I got to come home and go to church with him every Sunday. Right? It was never about ball. Right? And so like when this opportunity came up for me, I have a regret. I hate that word in life. Maybe it's a lesson. But my dad never got to hear my testimony that I think's impacted some people, I hope. God's given me quite a story. And you changed my trajectory to be back in my father's life. And by being back here, it was such an incredible opportunity. So your empathy. And I also remember I had a practice one day and I felt like I had pretty good hands. Felt like that was my asset, right? Speed was definitely not it. But I was dropping the ball. And you came up to me and said, at some point, you can't care about it that much. Because you saw me pressing and pressing and pressing. And I just thought, so you were showing me empathy over and over again, just encouraging me through your faith, right? And Dad passes away, and I find a note that you leave me of encouragement. And so I ask you to come sit on the couch. And then I look up your resume of all the places you've been, and I think of all the Todds that you've influenced. And I just thank you for making the opportunity to come. Is there a story of maybe a young man that was, or a staff person of anyone that you just kind of stands out in your journey that you'd like to share, that you feel like you maybe played a role in pushing them on the right path?
This is not to minimize anything, but I've been unbelievably fortunate. There's been a lot of people that we've been able to help, and that we've been able to encourage. I'll tell you this, and this is on my dad's grave marker tombstone, and this is a quote that I've always tried to go by. John Maxwell, who we all know, but John Maxwell, and I don't know if this was original with him or that he borrowed it, but whatever. But he said forever, and this is on my dad's tombstone, it's criticize me and I may not like you, flatter me and I may not believe you, ignore me and I may not forgive you, but encourage me and I will never forget you. Wow. And my dad was like that forever. I'll tell you a fast story about Journey. Is we were at a big time college game when I was 9 years old, and so we're sitting in the stands. And I might cry when I tell a story. But anyway, my dad looks over at me and he goes, hey, because he knew I wanted to coach. Because when I was in the 5th grade, I stood up in my 5th grade class, and he had to say what you want to be. I said, I want to be a college football coach. And so,
wow.
And that's been trajectory. And that's unbelievably fortunate. But my dad looked over at me at a game and he said, hey, he said, you know what? He said, you'll either play or coach in a lot of stadiums like this. And I thought, well, you haven't seen me play lately, so I'm not going to play in this kind of stadium. But I've been fortunate enough to coach at the absolute citadels of football. And just unbelievably fortunate.
Wow, and it all started. Do you have a story back from when you were a high school coach? I think, you have two different types of influence that I think coaches have. And I love that influence of those high school coaches. Do you have one that you would share? Maybe one of your high school coaches influenced you.
Well, I think it's always important to understand what players are thinking. And I had a kid one time, I can't even remember the kid's name, years ago. I mean, I was young, 22, 23, and he did something that you cannot even imagine. I mean, it was just so insane. And I got him over there, and you wanna go, what are you doing? I just put my arm around him and I said, hey, look around here. I said, there's not one person in this stadium or on this sideline that would even think that you would have done something like that. And he started laughing, and so I put him back in the game. And so that's the way that we've tried to do stuff. And I want to say another thing, because you've talked about your journey, and all of us have to have one of the most misconstrued things in our country is that, hey, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you work hard and you do this by yourself, and it's all up to you and your intestinal form. That is the biggest crock ever, because none of us can ever make it without somebody putting their hand on you or pulling you along and saying, hey, you can do this.
Wow.
I mean, just like so many people that over the years that when you think that things are going to go bad, I mean, there's somebody there pulling you. And so I'm not going to say it's been easy for me, but that's the way that I've always looked at life. And it's just like, hey, our duty is to pay things forward.
I could hear the joy of just sending you that email when you called me. And it was just, you were just gracious, and it was amazing. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because that is something I think we all think, right? I'm going to do my time. And I did do my time, but you opened a door, right? You pulled a favor of a friend. Otherwise, I would have showed up on this campus and be like, we get transfers all the time from the state schools that can't play.
Right.
I mean, that was one thing Coach Howard told me when I got here. We'll find out if you could really play or not. I'm like, well, no, I played at a bigger school than this. And he's like, no, we get that all the time. And so because of your call and pulling me aside, it changed the trajectory of my family, my life. And so I've always been appreciative.
Right. You know what I think we do for each other is I don't know that we ensure success for anyone, but what I think we do is we put them on the road to opportunity. Is that, hey, just when you think the road's the darkest, it's not so much that there's some magic bullet,
right?
And you say, okay, you go do this and everything's going to turn out. It's not that. It's that, hey, do you get somebody back on path, and do you say the right things to them to keep them moving forward? Because all I was a catalyst for you. Okay,
wow.
But you did all the things to transform your life, and everything in life is either transactional or it's transformational.
Interesting.
And coaching is always a little bit of both.
Wow.
So that's if you can have a few transformational things over the course of your time in this profession, that's good.
Do you have some stories of maybe one that just comes to mind where you pulled a guy back in line, like you put that player back in the game? See, I love that story, because I think so much now, like when I go watch a high school game, and I still coach high school football, and I see that, right? I see the mistake made, and then, well, we're not playing him anymore. But isn't that what this is about? Is to learn and then see how they recover from that. Right? Now, I'm not saying go put a guy out at corner that can't cover someone after 3 touchdowns, but I'm saying if you play corner long enough, you're going to get beat.
Right.
And then the response to that, has that always been your way of coaching?
For the most part. I mean, you've got to know, and you never know for sure.
Okay.
You never know how much rope to give someone and how many opportunities are enough. But you always have to be willing to realize in our sport, in any sport where you're competing, I don't care what you're doing, it's a game of mistakes.
Yeah.
And to be that arrogant is to think that, hey, just because we coach somebody or because you're playing at so-and-so university, that's what fans think, is whatever logo you've got on your helmet
Right.
is, well, there's no way they can make a mistake. That's got to be somebody's fault.
Right.
Well, coaching or playing, it's not about fixing the blame. That's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's about fixing the problem. All right? And can you give someone enough information, short term, to get them back in the game? And then can they go from there? Because all players ever care about is, can you help them be better?
Yeah.
They're not interested in, all those other things are important, but short term, and that's what coaching is. It's a combination of short term things and long term things. But in the course of a game, you've got to give them an adjustment, something that will make them play better.
Yeah.
And then they go out there, and then you can get to the long-term things, importance of life lessons, all those things. But if you can't solve a problem short-term, you're out of business.
Why do you think so many high school coaches are hanging it up? Why? Like, I see really a massive amount of attrition of our talented high school, character, faith-driven coaches.
Yeah, I don't. I haven't coached in high school for so long, so I don't know that I can.
Is there some wisdom maybe you would share if a guy was teetering and they think it's their calling and that's what they're called to do, but they're getting beat down? Because remember, you already said it, those people in the stands don't know that, right? My dad never played any athletics. He couldn't understand why, when I came to this university, why people didn't double me because they threw me the ball. Well, it was because the guy that played across from me ran a 4.31. Well, that's who everybody game planned for, right?
Good point.
So I had to explain to my father, like week 3, like the reason I get matchups is Alton's running full speed every time. They're scared to death of him. I mean, if he touches it, he scores.
Right.
So they'll let me catch it and just live to fight another down.
Right.
But those people in those stands are holding men and women accountable and not understanding it. And so I think what I've seen, at least in the last 10 years, is this extreme, well, hold on, you're going to hold my kid accountable, so I'm either going to pull him or the coach gets frustrated and they leave, right? So there's two things going on. Kids moving all over the place for what they think are opportunity, and families moving kids.
Right.
I think I've talked to 5 of the next, Tom Brady's this year, and I'm not sure they're starting on their high school campus.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so I think that's one issue, but that coach is dealing with that issue.
Right.
So you've got so many great insights. I was just curious if we could pull something out and can it for those high school coaches. Could you give them a pearl?
Yeah, the one thing that you have to understand about a world of noise that we live in now. We live in that world. I mean, and that noise is there all the time. But that noise has always been there. It's just more magnified now because of social media and the constant exposure and all of those things. But the same conversations that when I was 22 and started coaching and all that is, hey, the society's going to hell in the handbasket and we've got no chance and coaches are the only thing that's keeping us together and all that stuff. I mean, those are the same conversations that have been going around forever.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Now, what's important is not that those conversations are out there, but whose voice do you listen to?
Wow.
I mean, do you listen to the right voice? Is there somebody that'll come and put their arm around you and go, hey, listen, you're going the right direction here? All of these things that you think are overwhelming, they may be short term, but you've just got to get through this. And we always got to remember as coaches is we're a difference maker for someone, and you don't ever know when it is. You don't ever know when it is. It's okay. Do I go crazy on a guy when he's a young player and then he never wants to play again? And does he tune me out, tune everything in the program, everything in the culture? Does he tune all that out because of an overreaction?
Yeah.
So you've got to be aware of your role, and that's our role. I'm optimistic. I hear all the noise too, but I never listen to all the noise.
That's a great thought.
Right.
I've never thought of it that way.
Right. And it's our job to combat the noise. And it's easy to become unbelievably depressed and go, okay, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
Something that's come out on some of these conversations that we've just enjoyed is I'm amazed at how talented some people are, but yet their self-doubt is still there. right? And you've seen that.
Absolutely.
So you can see all the talent in the world, and then all of a sudden something triggers them, and then you either push them farther down that Dow or you bring them back.
Right.
And I've always seen that as a coach. It's like, but what you do get scared in that optimism is you hope it works out for that young man. But
Right.
to your point is you don't know.
Right.
It's out of your control.
Right. But you coach them that way, Todd. You coach them that way in a meeting.
Yeah.
Is no matter what we tell you,
Yeah.
no matter what you learn in the weight room, no matter what you learn class, all of those things are all just preparation.
Yeah.
All right. I can't guarantee you success, but I can show you how to have success if you're willing to do those things. But it's no guarantee. And I'm such a believer in mental health, and I am glad that we're combating that now, and then we're actually saying, okay, this is part of life.
Yeah.
We're all conditioned as athletes. You guys know, everybody in here knows this. We're all conditioned that you never say, hey, I'm
100%.
having a hard time with this.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're just not tough. Well, I'm glad that we're getting away from that. Now there's some inherent toughness to doing anything well, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to be willing to, hey, I've got to talk about this, and you got to be willing. You got to be able to talk to your coach about this.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we pride ourselves on is players have always felt like that they could come and talk about anything. Always.
Wow. Yeah, the stories I've heard of people bringing me some of those stories, right? We
absolutely.
can't say those out loud,
Absolutely.
right? And I have a privilege that people have shared them with me, but some of them scare me to death.
Absolutely.
Right? What some
As
of
they
these
should.
men and women are going through, to your point, but it is important. I think it's because, especially football, it's just like it's our form of being a gladiator, right? It's kind of how I always looked at it. And I've always been so impressed with the huge individuals and how athletic they were. That's always been, I'm like, man, my favorite thing is being a dad now. You want to fill your heart up and kind of be proud. So I've got a picture hanging in my office of me in the huddle. My daughter asked me, man, you grew a lot after junior high. She didn't realize that's a college photo.
Right.
And I'm the same size as I was then.
Right.
Dad's 6 foot, 200 pounds in that picture, but I look like a junior high kid. And she's looking at that, and I'm like, man, but those men are still going through those challenges, right? And then the pressures to be on some of those citadels of campuses, right? And I think that's one thing that I just wish the fans would have a little bit of grace towards, right? They're fans, which is short for fanatic, but that's noise.
Absolutely.
And it's about teaching those men and women to block that out, and that's what the great coaches do.
And the other thing is you hit the other thing that we have to do as coaches is we have to embrace that the most, and you could go multiple ways with this, but one of the most important things that you'll ever do is to be a father. And I used to give kids, I used to give lots of kids over the years, the quote is that anyone can be a father. It takes someone really special to be a dad. And then there's, that's just something, that's a learned skill. And unfortunately, is a lot of your ability as a father is, some of it is just blind luck. If you're fortunate enough to grow up in that environment, okay, you can learn from there. But so many things that are the most important things in our country and life, we leave to chance.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, because I'm passionately involved in lots of things, and government, faith, all of those things, those are trigger points for me. But if we don't teach those things, because I'm going to throw this out there. I'm just going to throw this out there. I don't understand why everyone in this country to graduate from high school, I will never understand why you don't have to pass the same civics test that you have to pass to be a naturalized citizen in this country. I will never understand that.
Wow.
And then we go, well, we've got this problem. People don't know about this, don't know about this, don't know about this. When someone doesn't know, you can't say, well, why don't you know? As a coach, you never have that luxury. Well, what do you mean you've got to cover this guy when you get a motion check or you get all of these things? You got to teach. That's our job. That is our job, to teach people how to be the type of citizen we want. I would also argue this point. We talk about that kids have changed and everything's changed. I would argue they haven't changed a lick.
Interesting.
I mean, I'll go to my grave believing that. I don't know that we always do as good a job as we should and could do at making sure that we're producing the right people. I'm not being critical of anything or anybody.
No, I understand
or any
what you're
institution.
saying. Yeah.
I'm just saying that is our collective responsibility of coaching, teaching, and living here.
But I think that goes into my passion to want to do this.
Absolutely.
I think those good character references for those young people
Right.
are listening to the wrong noise, to use your
Agreed.
words, right? So then they're now, so it's not that the kids have changed, it's who's leading them changed.
Absolutely.
And it's what they're listening to that's
Absolutely.
changed, right? So I have such a privilege to be on campuses, and I see a lot of Todds. I see who I was 30 years ago, and I see it in them. And I don't, but to your point, I am that optimist, right?
Absolutely.
I'll have a funny story about optimism. They took me out of the booth a couple years ago, and I've been on staff with a guy now multiple times. Me and Brent Barnes have been together. He always says that he has to take a yard off our quick spot because I'm always so optimistic we're so close, right? He's like, I've got to add +1
I love that.
on his hurry up offense because I'm like, Coach, it's 3rd and 3. He's like, that is the longest 3 yards, Barnes, I've ever seen.
I love
I'm like,
it.
well, we're going to get it either way.
Right.
But it was the optimism behind it and what we coach out of kids. I think, man, it's been such a privilege. And I think you touch on something that maybe we could have an impact on. And maybe you need to come back and talk more detailed about that because I think if we have better coaches, maybe some of those gaps would be filled. And I think if more people will stay after it. So I think there's been a lot of life lessons today, Coach. I'm going to start listening to the good noise and not the bad, right? And then maybe we find these teachable moments where we change not just the football stadiums, but we change how people come to this country. You know, I didn't even think of that. So I appreciate you challenging my thought around that.
Right. I got one more thing. It is when you talk about gaps, and John will remember that it used to be the big deal in FCA forever and ever, be the man in the gap.
Oh, yeah.
All right, but what if we didn't always have to be that guy in the gap? What if everybody was racing to be that person in the gap,
Wow.
rather than waiting for somebody to get in the gap? Why isn't it a race to get
And
in
we're
the gap?
fighting over that spot.
Right. Hey, this is a problem. Anybody can identify a problem. All right? It takes somebody with some insight and passion and love and faith, if you will. All of those things. It takes that type of person to encourage that. And we want to say we don't have good enough players, and that's true. Coaching and cooking are exactly the same. I'll tell one more story and then I'll stop. But coaching,
You don't have to stop,
Right,
Coach.
okay.
We can have this couch until we stop.
Okay, but coaching and cooking are exactly the same.
Okay.
All right. If I'm cooking and I've got prime meat, I've got the best produce available, all of that stuff. I've got all that. It's hard to mess it up. Okay. I've got to be a stone cold idiot to mess up a meal like that. Same way with coaching. If we have good players, it's hard to mess it up. But what you have to realize is when do you know the ingredients aren't quite as good as we want? When do you add this little bit of salt and pepper or whatever, or cayenne pepper, whatever you add to it, that's what we've got to know how to do.
I just can't believe, after 48 years, the passion you brought into this couch amazes me, Coach.
I appreciate
It's such a
that.
blessing.
I appreciate
and
that.
it was from the moment you picked up the phone call about this. So I'll just tell you, you have left a lasting legacy. You'll see it when we air this. I hope all those campuses that you touched, that someone makes a comment and they talk about it. I hope we honor your family by letting you share your stories. There's so many men and women that have passed away that their stories aren't captured. And so we're going to capture this, and you're going to keep coaching. You still got a little bit left in the tank, it looks like. So you keep doing it, and if you can come back, we'll let you come back, because now you've dove into some topics that I've got to actually check my heart on and continue to try to do better. I want to race you to that gap. I think you might be ahead of me.
Okay.
Okay?
Appreciate it, Todd.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Thanks.